I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock, gave me a firm place to stand. He set my feet on a rock, gave me a firm place to stand. Set my feet on a rock, yeah, and here I am. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock, gave me a firm place to stand. He set my feet on a rock, gave me a firm place to stand. Set my feet on a rock, yeah, and here I am. Waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He set my feet on a rock, gave me a firm place to stand. Set my feet on a rock, yeah, and here I am. Hey, hey, here I am. Here I am. Here I am.
Hi, and welcome to New Life Online. My name is Dave Finley. I'm the pastor at New Life Assembly here in Killarney, Manitoba, and we're so glad you've joined us for our worship program today. In just a few moments, I'm going to share a message that talks about God listening to us. Do you ever feel like sometimes no one is listening? Well, God does listen, and God does hear our prayers, and God is listening to your prayers even today. Next week, God willing, we will begin a new series of messages that talk about the Red Letter Challenge. And I have a short video that introduces that topic that will begin next Sunday. Here it is now.
We live in an interactive world where new social media challenges pop up all the time. Some for enjoyment, some for a good cause, others are just plain dangerous. What if you tried a new challenge? One that could transform your life, community, and the world. What if you spent 40 days studying Jesus' words and applying his teachings to everyday life, all focused on 5 principles: being, forgiving, serving, giving, and going like Christ? So what are you waiting for? Let's join together and take the Red Letter Challenge.
We invite you to join with us next week for the Red Letter Challenge as we begin. If you'd like more information about New Life Assembly, you can always connect with us by texting the word CONNECT to the number 431-400-9585, and we'll be sure to get back to you. Deb's going to lead us in some songs of praise and worship. Feel free to join along with her.
17, and 18.
When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their trouble. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. The Lord is near. The Lord is near. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. The Lord is near. The Lord is near. Oh, the Lord is near. The Lord is near. The Lord is near.
You know, prior to the time I was 24 years of age, I lived a pretty sheltered life, and I had never witnessed the birth of anything at all. Not a puppy, not a horse, not a cow. The closest thing I came to at one time was driving onto a farmer's yard, and I saw a tractor with a chain at the front, and it was pulling back, and I didn't understand what it was. I asked somebody what was going on, and they said that they were trying to pull a calf. And I remember thinking, oh, that does not sound good at all. And so I never had witnessed anything like that. I knew very little about life. And at 24 years of age, my wife gave birth to our daughter. And the only thing I knew prior to that time was what I had learned on TV. And that had to do with the screaming, the noise. All I remember from every TV birth that I had ever seen was women screaming out in total agony. And so as we approached the time when my wife was to give birth to our firstborn, I was not looking forward to it. And of course, I understand that's coming from my perspective and not my wife's perspective. But all I could think of was, when is the screaming going to start? And I remember going through that process in the hospital in Saskatoon, and it was going, from my point of view, relatively smoothly. And in fact, just over in another room, I heard another lady giving birth, and she was going through the whole screaming thing. She was screaming out and yelling out in pain. And I remember asking the nurse one time when she came to check on Elaine, I said, when does the screaming part start? And I referred to the woman down the hall, and she said, "Oh no." She said, "Your wife is much further advanced than she is." The sad part of that story was that the woman who was screaming was not a woman. She was a 16-year-old girl, and she was by herself. No parents, no boyfriend, nobody. She was giving birth to herself. And so when I turned back to Elaine, I realized that she was much further in advanced in the process, and she gave birth, of course, to a beautiful baby girl. And we were so happy and so excited. But that was my limited exposure. And of course, you know as well as I do, it's not so much when we go through pain that really terrifies us, but there's nothing worse than a parent hearing their child, their son, their daughter, going through horrific pain. There's nothing that brings sympathetic pain as that. And we don't want to hear those we love going through such horrible pain. In the Bible, in the book of Exodus, chapter 2, we read the story of the Israelites who were going through a terrible time. And the Bible says in Exodus 32, Exodus 2, verses 23 to 25, the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham and with Isaac and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. For 400 years, the Israelites had lived as slaves in Egypt, and the situation had continued to worsen. They were under the terrible thumb of the Israelite slave owners and slave masters, and life was not good for them at all. Of course, you and I know that life hasn't been good for the last couple of years where we live with COVID. People have suffered, people have died, kids have suffered from missing school, businesses have suffered. It's been a terrible time, and people have been calling out to God. And there are some lessons that we need to learn about calling out to God. And some of these lessons we have been learning, and you have been learning along with us. Here's a few more that we're talking about today. The first thing is that we know that God hears us when we cry out to him. The Bible says in 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verses 12 to 16, I have heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a temple for sacrifices. When I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or command locusts to devour the land, or send a plague among my people, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Now my eyes will be open and my ears attentive to the prayers offered in this place. I have chosen and consecrated this place, this temple, so that my name may be there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. In the New Testament, Jesus also spoke about prayer, and he said in Matthew 6, verse 6, but when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. The Bible, throughout all of the Bible, speaks about a God who hears and listens to us as we call out to him. God hears our prayers. God heard the groans of the Israelites in their time of slavery. And God is hearing us today as we call out to God. God invites us to call out to him. God invites us to call out to God in prayer. Of course, one of the lessons that we learn is that God doesn't always answer when we want him to. Sometimes when we call out to God, it seems like we're getting no answer, and it causes us to question whether God is hearing us, or if he's hearing us, does he care about what we're going through? I don't know how many times I've talked to people who've questioned whether or not God hears them and have questioned whether or not God cares what they're going through. Some of you today are going through the most difficult time of your life, and you've been calling out to God, and at this point you seemingly have received no answer. But I want to assure you today, God does hear you. God hears you when you pray, and while it may seem like God is not answering your prayer right now, He is indeed. Now, you know what happens when we don't get an answer from God right away. We tend to use that as an excuse to try and help God. We try and work the situation out for ourselves. We try and make something good out of a difficult situation by doing things on our own. All through the Bible, we read stories of men and women who tried to help God fix certain situations. I think of Abraham. He was promised that he would have a child by his wife Sarah, but he decided that he would try and help God by having a child with Hagar, the servant girl. And of course, that did not work out. Moses felt called to be a deliverer for the people of Israel. And when he was 40 years of age, he tried to help God. And in fact, he killed an Israelite and ended up running for his life and hiding in the desert for another 40 years. He did not help God. David tried to help God and messed things up. Peter tried to help Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane the night Jesus was betrayed. You'll recall that Peter pulled out a sword and cut off a servant's ear. He was trying to protect Jesus as well as he could. When we try to help God fix certain situations, it often doesn't go well. And so God's delays are not an excuse for us to try and help God. We must patiently wait for God to do His work and to do what He wants done. And the third lesson, of course, which is probably most important for us, is that God often answers such prayers for help by raising up people who will lead, who will deliver, who will kind of go in front and help us through the difficult times. It may take a while. It doesn't always happen at once. As the Israelite people called out to God, God was indeed working. While it may have seemed like nothing was happening, we read that Moses was born. Now, it took 80 years for Moses to step into his role as deliverer, but God was at work. Not always in our time, but God was raising up Moses to be a leader. And throughout the Bible, we've read story after story of God raising up people who will lead the people, who will serve the people, who will deliver the people and help them out of their struggles. God is raising up people. And I happen to believe that in the midst of this situation with COVID, God today is raising up people. It may be a political leader that God is raising up. Right now in Canada, the Conservative Party has to choose a new leader. Maybe God will raise up a political leader that will help us. I tend to doubt it, but maybe that will be the case. In most likely cases, God will raise up people just like you and just like me. People who are regular, ordinary people. Many people who feel like they have no skills. They have nothing really much to offer. You wonder how you're going to make a difference in the world. But God is raising up people today in our community, in our country, and in our world, people who are going to help, people who are going to serve, people who are going to bring answers to the problems that we are facing right now. In fact, I wouldn't look in the mirror too much as I speak about this, because that person that God is raising up may look just like you. God is raising up people just like you to touch people's lives, to help people, to encourage people. God may be raising you up right now for the specific purpose of ministering to others and bringing hope to people who are discouraged, to people who have groaned in their cries to God and feel like no one is answering. God is raising up people just like you and just like me to come along beside them and say, God is listening, God is hearing, and God is working. And I pray that you will listen to what God's call is on your life, that you will hear God speak into your life as He raises you up for the ministry that God is calling you to. God bless you.
I've been wrestling with purpose. What was I created for? I'm more than what you see on the surface. See beneath my skin and scars, I'm skinned and scarred, marred and twisted, scarred by the past I need to be lifted. And sometimes I question my own existence. What was I put here for? In my seams, it seems that there seems to be more. It's like I'm a light, unplugged from the socket. I mean, do I really exist to put money in my pocket? This 9 to 5 feels like a 9 to 9. My mind entwined, I pass the time, life circles me as I wait. What is my estate? I feel like I was made for something great, and yet I can't quite put my finger on it. But when I look at my fingers and I see their design, I realize I'm one of a kind, and something created me. No, someone created me. And that someone made me for a reason. Even though it's clear the past years have been treason, I still sense this drawing, this calling, that even in the midst of my falling, there was someone who died to pick me up, someone who rose to fix me up, someone who's coming back to lift me up. And that someone is Jesus. See, God made me for a purpose, and when I delight in Him, it's brought to the surface.
Your grace